The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast, where we dive deep into the media industry headlines and dissect the digital disruption that diverges the masses into the new media counterculture and away from the media establishment. Here is the King of Podcasts.
Thanks for joining me for episode 178 here on the Broadcasters Podcast. And before we get started, I want to go ahead and just take a minute to go and talk about the beginning of the program, where I decided to go and change up how the show starts off, the message of the program. Thought that's something that we should go ahead and put a little bit of focus on right now, because that is the transition of the show. Now, it's not as if that the program is not going to continue to have guests. Like, I still think we'll have guest interviews, but at this point I haven't felt the point where I wanted to go back out and find out what subject I wanted to go and talk about next to the guests out there, because it's kind of held off. We did talk about a lot of influencer marketing, and so far I haven't really had any guests at all since March. I mean, I recorded a lot of shows going back from the pandemic, and I remember doing that for about a good 3-4 months. And I racked so many up that I ran them all the way up until earlier this year. But I haven't decided to put any interviews really that much this year, because I feel like I'm in my groove now doing this. Now being the 4th year of the program, I really feel like I have so much content to talk about, especially after the pandemic with the digital disruption, and just to go into some real deep dive analysis of what's going on. So as the voice announcer starts off the show, we're deep diving now into the media industry headlines, which I always do, dissecting the digital disruption that diverges the masses into the new media counterculture away from the media establishment. So the digital disruption, it's apparent that we know that what it's doing is creating a rift where people are in an exodus. They are moving away from the traditional media establishment, the Hollywood showbiz type feel. There are still room for that type of format in certain ways, but we know it's changed. And there are still certain established forms of media that are still in a traditional form. Music is still being produced in a traditional form. It's just being distributed in a digital form. Same thing with television, same thing with movies, and radio is just becoming podcasting for the most part, but radio could still have a role to play. And it's not as if we can't see traditional media outlets become relevant again, but they're not, because they haven't been doing well by that. And the corporate structure needs to learn before the counterculture basically just swallows them up and spits them out. That's what needs to be understood. And by worrying about cultural, social norms that some of these bigger companies, for whatever narrative they want to do, they want to go ahead and continue to build on that and create something else with the culture. Meanwhile, the counterculture is always constantly pushing. That's that organic mainstream I've talked about, the secondary, the parallel mainstream, because we have countercultures, mainstream media cultures that are parallel. I've talked about that. And really the phrase I should have been using the whole time was counterculture. Because counterculture breeds into the mainstream culture. But what happened is, it used to be the counterculture could find its way and cross over into the mainstream media. But what we've really learned more because of this digital disruption in the last 25 years, the internet has created where we do not have to wait for mainstream culture to catch up. Instead, mainstream culture continues to make the same mistakes they made, and that allows the digital culture to thrive. And then what does the corporate culture decide to do? Well, they need to go ahead and adapt. So your mainstream establishment, media establishment, the Viacoms, the Disneys of the world, they have to adapt. And they have to just go on to the same digital platforms like the rest of them have already established themselves and try to play catch up. So when you look at the streaming media and you see all of the media outlets that are there trying to compete against Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, Apple TV that were on before them, then the pandemic hits, the panic comes in. So you see Paramount, Peacock, HBO Max, Disney Plus all come in very rapidly. Now, they might have had plans to get this done sooner, but we saw what the pandemic did. We saw the corporate reaction. But then the digital disruption has also caused all these media platforms to create new content. Some of it might be organic and different, but for the most part, they're rehashing and retooling and resurrecting content because that's where they have to go. They're going to go with tried and true. This is the mentality that we have now. Meanwhile, the digital disruption, the counterculture, can go wherever they want to go. And now we don't worry about, because the internet broke the cycle to get that exposure that you wanted. You no longer need television or traditional radio or traditional physical units to be able to go and make yourself successful. It's no longer needed. And the sooner that the mainstream media establishment, and I'm talking about news, it's not a political thing. Once the establishment, all these big media companies get in line and realize that, and they better start realizing we need to start paying attention more to the counterculture and start playing to them, because the generation that is coming up, you're losing the generation that will still adapt, will still take on and watch the legacy media, your network and cable television. But that generation's going away. You're getting more cord cutters. You're getting the millennials are now in the cusp of where they might still continue to have cable, but really they are adapting more to having a more of a digital upfront, except for those that might feel they still need it because some of the content that's on network and cable, some millennials will still hold on to the traditional and the digital and still have a mixture of both. But the next generation after that, your Gen Zs, your younger millennials, and Gen Y after that, they're probably going to go into a time where they're not going to need physical units to listen to or watch or consume their media. Because it could very well be, unless the cable networks find a new reason for themselves, much like radio, they all need to find a new purpose. It's not as if the technology that came with them is not relevant and cannot be useful, but they need to find a new purpose. They haven't found themselves where they need to be yet. It's going to take time, and there's a lot of time and a lot of content on this show that I can go and run through every week to put together just an hour of what's going on here and go into it. And that's different than what other shows do. Now, we get some analysis from other shows. There are a couple of shows out there that might kind of do something similar to this, but this is a show that I always brought on to fill a void because nobody's talking about this. Maybe you hear about it on a random episode or on a random blog and things like that, but then I try to put it all together. Am I the best voice for this? Probably not. But I am the one that's willing to do it and put myself out there. And I've given myself time to really, on a learning curve. I've always had loads of interest. There's never been a question there. I've always been interested in what's going on here. But more importantly, I want to hear about this content. This show, if anything, is made for me. And I know there's a handful of people that listen to this show. This is not a major audience. If you listen to the show on a weekly basis, you're in rarefied air, to quote a professional wrestler that I follow. I'm just saying that this is not for everybody. Media fouls that listen to this program, or some people that are just curious about the media in general that will follow this program, I thank you for listening to this program. I'm grateful that you actually check it out for yourselves, and it hopefully opens your mind. And most importantly, we're talking about media which can easily be manipulated for cultural, social, political reasons. We know that. Political correctness, social and political norms, the inclusion factor, diversity and inclusion, all these things, which should be part of the conversation. Never said it wasn't. But, of course, we know there are people that are performative. That's becoming more of a call out now, where we talked about performative allies, especially in my When I'm Not Podcasting series. I talked about that quite a bit. But when I look at what appeals to an audience, That's still what it comes down to. The digital counterculture appeals to the mass audience. It just does. That's why Netflix can put on new shows. No matter what it is, they're appealing to the audience. Are the networks, the corporate network channels, are the cable channels? Are the suits that run all these companies, are they looking at finding content that appeals to their audience or appeals to the mass, because of mass appeal? We know that's not always the case. What's been happening is we're getting a lot of concept content, a lot of independent content that might have now has been being magnified for a purpose to fit a social, cultural, political norm. That's okay. That always happens. It's always been that way. But we notice that people are not appreciating it so much because it's being pushed down our throat. When it was just organic and being brought into the mix, there are a lot of people that are very like-minded and very open to different ideas and concepts and everything. And they can go ahead and appreciate some of the independent projects or some of the major projects that are being put out and who's running them. But we know that some things that are happening now, there's an agenda behind it. Agenda-driven content doesn't do as much as mass appeal content. As I close the show every week, the control of your content is in your hands. Do you want to go ahead and placate to a smaller group where you might get some critical acclaim because of who are the critics and what kind of power do they have? And influence to the corporate types that have lots of money and resources to look at your projects? Or do you go ahead and put yourself out in the organic counterculture where you're going to have to work really hard and grind to get yourself where you want to be in the media business, wherever you are? Myself, I'm a host on this podcast, and I host other podcasts. And that's what I do for a living in my full time. And I do a lot of other hustles besides this. If you hear my When I'm Not Podcasting series, you see where all my curiosities, all my different interests lie. And part of that is money is money related. That's just how it is. But, and I absolutely grind all the time to do podcasting. I've learned the craft of podcasting for a long time for what I'm doing here, what I've been doing on my full-time job, coming up on 16 years. Radio and media in general for 27 years, coming up on 28 in January. And it's always been a grind to learn, enhance, improve, and harness all the information that I learn and really continue to evolve and change with the times. It's been very important because when I did get started, the internet was just starting to come into light. We were really into that. So I got that part. Plus, the traditional media that I was into was already changing. I mean, the media landscape has started changing right when I came in. So whatever I was going to get into that I officially was interested in prior to finishing college had changed ultimately. So we had to adapt. We've all had to adapt. And we've learned the grind. And for me, I know to be an entrepreneur in this space, to really get results, I'm going to keep doing this. I work hard to put this show together. I work hard to get all my other shows together. I've been doing my own podcasting since 2012, and I've done over 600 programs on my wrestling podcast. I've done over 300 now with my When I'm Not Podcasting series because I put out, like every other week, every other day, I put out a new episode. And this program, we're coming up on 200. I've been working hard, real hard to get this going. And I don't miss weeks. As the best podcaster I can be, I try to give a quality performance and I try to give quality content that people are going to want to hear on a regular basis. I am not pussyfooting around and I don't go into tangents. As much as I can, I try to make sure I focus on the programming itself. The reason you're here is not to waste your time. And I'm not wasting my time by doing that because just to do a random show doesn't do anybody any good. There's a lot of different shows that can do that. And I can't stand programs that are off the subject of what they're talking about, or they just go into subjects that I just don't care about. And there's a lot of times I might have a bunch of different articles I might go ahead and bring up that I might not bring up on the show, and they might just miss out because they weren't important enough. But tonight I wanted to put a monologue in front to explain the direction of the show and to explain what I've been doing now in terms of what the show is and how it's continued to evolve. I did call this show Creative, Not Corporate. It was never the best name for this show, but it's still, at one point I thought it was really the fight between creativity and corporate control. But it's not anymore. It's the counterculture versus the establishment. That's the ongoing struggle. And this is where I want to come from and say, we look at both sides because people can benefit from both. But what you need to is have a well-rounded understanding of how the media business works and how it is working right now and operating. So when we look at the corporate end, we look at the money, we look at who's running what and what changes are being made and what decisions and ideas are being implemented, it's very important to get the overall view. And in some cases, radio is one of the best examples for me because I am so invested in it, and this is my bully pulpit to go after radio on a regular basis. I don't know if they're listening. I don't know if they are. But at least I'm going to be the one person that is not in the corporate radio landscape that knows about it because I was there. I might not know everything about it, but I know enough of how it works to be able to make some comments. Educated comments. So now you know what the show's all about. Only took me 178 episodes to get to this point. But I still think what we're doing here is yeoman's work. And I would love to get the interaction from you. I know that's asking for a lot. And I did get some interaction out there, and I appreciate it. I'm glad for people that subscribe to the YouTube channel and check it out. And I appreciate all of you for listening to the program, sitting through the commercials that are on here because it helps to pay this show off. It helps you to put more things into the program and improve it. So I appreciate all of that. It's a lean, mean machine I have right here. I am producing, directing, promoting, all of it. I'm a one-man show here, and I'm proof positive that with the grind, I can make something out of my content because content I know is king in my mind, and I control what my content is because I want to do it by myself. I don't even use the resources for my full-time. I've done this on my own, organic, without the help of being able to go and say, hey, can I put this show on this network? I could have done that, but I chose not to. Because I wanted to make sure that these programs were of my focus without any other input. The only input I want is feedback from the listeners. That's all I want. I want your feedback. So if you want to give me feedback, this show listens to you. I listen to you because there's nobody else. There's no intermediaries, no buffers, no middle people. It's just me doing this show. This is what matters to me. Okay. This is the first thing I want to bring up, which I think is a very fascinating story as we are in Pride Month here in the month of June. Insider.com put together a very comprehensive story about characters in cartoons. We don't talk much about kids' television, but this does stand out. And I think we have a younger audience that might appreciate what they're doing right here. Because we know that gender, diversity, equity, inclusion, race are very important to some people. And I'm not judging whether it is or not. But since we know there's been a struggle for physical, real-life people to be embedded into management, into the idea process, into the decision-making, and into upper management, or be the top executives, the C-level, if you will. As that is something that's still being considered, what we are seeing a lot of, according to the story, is there is a lot of inclusion. And it's being programmed to our kids. Now, I'm not here to talk any about political, to say, well, this is, abusing our kids and this is mentally manipulating our kids. I'm not worried about that. That's a subject for other politicos to talk about, whether side of the aisle you're on. What I'm going to talk about here is I'm fascinated and curious as to what has been done because we're not paying attention about kids programming. or programming that's targeted to even to younger, to more to the teenage crowd, or maybe to younger adults, because we know that also happens too. Animation can be done for a wide range of adults, but we know that across the board, we're seeing it more. We're seeing it. The younger generations are definitely still interested in cartoons and anime and various animated content. That doesn't go away. From their video games to their television, it's still very rampant. So they chronicled 259 LGBTQ characters and cartoons that bust the myth that kids can't handle inclusion. So in the story, they mentioned that from early Bugs Bunny to Disney villains like Ursula and the Little Mermaid, queer culture and gender transgression have always been present in animation. Historically, that inclusion has been illustrated through subtextual representation, leaving viewers to extract what they will or won't from coded characters and storylines. But small screen animation in the past decade has undergone a noticeable shift. Representation in children's cartoons in particular has increased in frequency, nuance, and overtness. This change is a significant step forward, according to this article, despite a decades-long effort to keep representation discreet. So they go through the analysis of what they found out. And in the last 5 years, it has increased exponentially. And they talk about the first 10 animated shows to feature LGBTQ characters. Super Ted, Gargoyles, Arthur, Dexter's Laboratory, Hey Arnold, Superman the Animated Series, Courage the Cowardly Dog, George and Martha, As Told by Ginger, and Static Shock. It's all between 1983 and 2000. They said there were 7 shows that featured LGBTQ inclusive content in the 1990s, 11 in the 2000s, 48 in the 2010s. The shift was largely fueled by the 2013 release of Steven Universe, a Cartoon Network series created by a non-binary bisexual showrunner by the name of Rebecca Sugar that follows a gender non-conforming child and his non-binary alien gem friends as they fight to save the world. And these characters have increased steadily year over year, peaking in 2019. And at the moment, the 10 shows featuring the most characters of LGBTQ persuasion. Steven Universe is the most, She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, Craig of the Creek, Danger and Eggs, OKKO, Let's Be Heroes, The Loud House, The Dragon Prince, Ready, Jet, Grow, 12 Forever, My Little Pony, Friendship with Magic. That's a lot. And most of these shows are actually featured on Cartoon Network, among 29 platforms. 19 of the shows are on Cartoon Network, 14 on Netflix, 9 on Disney Channel, 7 on Nickelodeon, 5 on PBS Kids, 4 on Disney XD, 4 on Amazon Prime Video, 3 on ABC Kids, 2 on the WB, 2 on Toon Disney, 2 on Discovery Family, 2 on Disney Junior. That covers most of the programming that's out there for kids in the first place. That's a lot. Among the LGBTQ inclusive animated kids shows by studio, DreamWorks holds the most. DreamWorks Animation with 9, Cartoon Network Studios and Disney Television Animation tie with 8. Then there's Nelvana, Nickelodeon Animation Studio, Warner Brothers Animation, Amazon Studios, Wild Brain Studios, Hasbro Studios, and DC Entertainment. It's a lot of big studios. A lot of corporate influence and among that, we notice. And the gender representation, if we want to break down of what people are, cis, woman or women is 102. Then cis, man or men are 86. Then you have non-binary 38. Unknown 16. Trans or woman 4. Agender 3. Gender fluid 3. Gender nonconforming 1. Intersex non-binary 1. Mask 1, non-binary femme 1, trans man 1, trans non-binary 1, genderless 1. Then they talk about the sexual orientation. So there's gender representation and sexual orientation. The sexual orientation, 101 of the characters in these shows are unknown, 50 are gay, 49 lesbian, 22 queer, 16 bisexual, 14, undetermined. Then the lower end, you have pansexual, asexual, aromatic, bisexual, pansexual, polysexual, fluid, lesbian, bisexual, polysexual. Wow. The other part, too, is that when you have all these phrases with the word sex in it, and worrying about what sex you are, I can understand an argument that will come from this, from families and from parents, about what their kids are growing up to and finding as role models from the program they're watching growing up. Now, it is what it is. I mean, for me, I would rather it be where any program represents the makeup of everyday society, not just some kind of narrative that has to be put together, some agenda-driven kind of motive. I want it to be a proper representation of what the country looks like. You know, look at the population, look at the census, and naturally give us a cast of characters based on what there's really out there, what real life is like, not what people want to perceive as real life. But that's just me. And we're also learning about as well, interesting stat here, is that with LGBTQ characters, who are allowed to take the lead and who are featured characters? Well, in the study, 83% of the 214 animated LGBTQ characters, 83% were in recurring guest roles. 22 of the 70 programs featured characters as main characters. So it's not something that is pounded over the head on every program. There are feature and guest characters that are representing the best for LGBTQ representation, as we're learning about this. And the 12 most used methods for confirming LGBTQ characters in animated kids series, social media is the most. Then you have others including creative team interview, romantic partnership, romantic affection, parenting, kiss, character proximity, insider confirmation, voice actor, marketing confession, etc. There's a whole lot to there. You can take a look at the link at the website, broadcasterspodcast.com, and check it out all for yourself. It's quite comprehensive. Now, let's move along a little more into what's going on with the media itself overall. A real state of where things are evolving and changing post-pandemic. Because that, we have a lot to go into about that tonight. Axios puts out a report that says the media industry braces for a post-pandemic reality and global revenues by select media sectors over time and the big changes that are going on with each. Gaming on mobile and PCs is by far the fastest growing sector globally within the media and entertainment industry. Streaming video is also experiencing explosive growth. What's driving the news is a slew of new media mergers that entertainment giants are quickly moving to consolidate even further in order to have content at scale to compete in streaming, which this is, once again, the media establishment trying to play catch-up with the digital counterculture. Netflix, in some ways, is that, but they are mainstream. They've crossed over. Hulu, Amazon, those are all mainstream. But it's still counterculture, no matter how you slice it, because of what they're doing to disrupt the rest of the establishment. Some of the stories that have come out is recently announced Discovery Warner Media deal, which will trigger a round of merger action as its peers scramble to meet its size. Amazon buying MGM Studios, which is one of the last remaining independent movie studios in the country. And of those mergers, they think that AMC Networks and Lionsgate are considered ripe targets. Plus, possible merger between Comcast, NBCU, and Viacom CBS have also gotten attention. So we might even get more deregulation and even bigger media companies. Is that any better? Meanwhile, the counterculture, the streaming media giants, are focusing on getting bigger to compete with tech giants, and tech giants are eyeing for even bigger fish, gaming. Netflix is reportedly hiring a gaming chief to expand even further into games, particularly on mobile. Google, Microsoft, Apple, and Amazon have increased investments in cloud gaming with an eye of making more money from video game subscriptions. The big picture is that gaming is growing so fast, it's one day going to surpass pay TV subscriptions in revenue. Pay TV is in terminal decline in the U.S. and a bleak outlook abroad as broadband becomes more accessible globally. And that's what's getting missed right now from the revenue pipeline for the bigger content companies. So Disney, Viacom, CBS, and Comcast NBCU used to have pay TV subscriptions and advertising that helped make them a lot of money. But now they have to go into streaming and compete with the rest. And those companies are the ones struggling the most to balance investments in streaming because pay TV is still big enough to create sizable drive revenues and profits. Esports are growing particularly very fast, but the industry is still so young. The revenue potential right now is still very small. Print and cinemas show little sign of growth as the internet allows more people to consume content on their phones or via streaming TVs at home. But the movie theaters are still holding on right now. They're doing well. The movies are coming back, and some blockbusters are coming in. That should definitely go and get people all the way back. But we already see that the numbers for movies and the box office tickets are coming in very well across the board. Movies are now able to go and definitely make over $100 million domestically. And just wait till Fast 9 or F9, Black Widow, among others. Then you got Top Gun and the new No Time to Die James Bond movie we've been waiting for several years. Those are all coming in, and we'll definitely see some big revenues coming out of those movies. So movies are coming back quickly. Plus, the meme stock stuff and AMC theaters taking some time to go and pay down their debt, taking advantage of the stock price going up, doing all that, and selling more stocks out there. They're doing a lot of what they need to go and take care of. So that's good. In the same vein of the post-pandemic reality where things are going, we have digital trends that are transforming the media industry in general. As we look at that, here are those three. Direct-to-consumer video streaming is one of the biggest trends that are happening right now. The biggest media and entertainment innovations in 2021. Video streaming began to witness acceleration during the initial phases of lockdowns imposed worldwide as people stayed indoors. They looked for several meaningful and quality video content. The change even fueled a downfall in the paid TV subscription for the consumers. Over-the-top platforms like the streaming services provided the diversity of choices and cross-platform compatibility that TV viewers had not experienced earlier. That's the other part. Not just the ability to consume so much content at one time, it's also where you can watch it, where you can consume it, and how you can consume it. It's the sky is the limit on it. The outcomes were also streaming warfare. The move defined the trend of media houses receding content and hitting third-party applications brutally. Now we also have the ad-free viewing experience. Because the people choose over-the-top platforms because of the ad-free experience, the volume of consumable content has risen and made retaining users seamlessly. Studios now turning to video streaming. Ad-supported content is predicted to come back soon. Because of the pitfall of keeping subscriptions competitive, over-the-top platforms are gathering and filtering every bit of data to offer not annoying ads. But that's going to happen. Advertisers are going to have some place to put their content out there. What else are they going to do? Finally, the third trend is smarter personalization. People want the deeper engagement that digitization can provide. And it is expected to see firms turn inward to figure out which content they are good at creating and which customers they target at a deeper level. More niche communication and content development driven toward those audiences can be seen in today. And it means an increase possibly in artificial intelligence or AI and machine learning, ML, to draw connection points so that audiences' preference can be better analyzed. So just so you see the algorithms for like a TikTok or Facebook or Twitter or whatever you're watching, to be able to go and personalize your viewing or your listening experience. That's what they mean by AI and machine learning. That's coming up soon. This story I found out there, I'm not sure what to take about it, but this caught my attention. as we know, China does have a lot of influence with what our media is because of the kind of technology they are able to build out. As we know, TikTok has taken the world by storm with all the people that are able to get on there. It's their platform, their technology, and it's working for us. Well, there was a recent internet convention, which was the 9th annual China Internet Audio and Video Convention, the CIAVC, happened on June 3rd. And there were some voiced criticism of short videos and so-called media platforms. The event had its eye on the surge in market value of short videos and live streams, inviting guests across from the media industry, in addition to traditional audio and video streaming platforms. This is in China, where you're probably not going to hear about this much anywhere else. But despite recognizing its popularity, representatives of mainstream video platforms did not hold back from expressing concerns regarding the industry's potential negative influence on copyright protection and consumer behavior. So, mainstream establishment video platforms complaining about losing on their bottom line. So, copyright protection, consumer behavior. Gong Yu, who's the founder and CEO of Excoriate, he held the so-called derivative work prevalent on media platforms should be regarded as a form of copyright infringement. Creators of such content combined unlicensed and original content, generating recreated products bordering on piracy, and that such soft piracy made its way most easily into the short video market, where large volumes of illegal content could be broken up to get around review and censorship. Then they had a motion picture company also echoing the same opinion and asserting that society should treat, quote, copyright infringement as severely as drunk driving. And there was also remarks to popular video sharing sites expressing hopes that the platform, which was one of them, and they called Bilibili, would consider original content as its primary goal. Then you have the vice president of Tencent Video, Sun Zhongshuai. When it came to copyright protection, he said that 10 years ago, quote, Youku and other first-generation long video streaming websites had very severe copyright infringement issues, and the problem was only mitigated after long periods of contention and regulation efforts. So there's talking about regulating and controlling what you're allowed to create of content. If this ever comes down the line to America, watch out. Because this very well could be. But in China, we know that the government there is very controlling of what content there might be. But the technology is going out to everywhere else. If there's something where people think that in order for mainstream video platforms to be able to make their money, they might need to go ahead and kind of control what the content's going to be, they might just do that. Then there was the vice president of ByteDance, which owns TikTok, Li Liang, responding saying that with WeChat, that a Tencent official that spoke about what they thought about when it comes to intellectual property of short videos. This vice president said that the only short video platform that has not implemented a minor protection mode as required as the channel's functions of WeChat, which the company claims to have had millions of users. Maintaining also that Tencent kept attacking the industry while the company had been pouring efforts in the expansion of its own short video operations. So they're trying to talk about controlling the content of what's being made available for children and having some parental controls on it, which I totally agree on that. Interesting stats out of China. Users in China's internet audio and video industry have amounted to 944 million as of December last year. The number of short video platform users, 873 million, making up 88.3% of all internet users. With a total value of over 1 trillion yen, or $157 billion US, the network copyright industry now represents one of the most lucrative and quickly growing markets in the country. So copywriting could be another way to make money, and this is something that's going to be considered, I would imagine, by the major platforms, the big corporate media platforms out there. If they're going to want to make money, if they start losing the battle on streaming, then that's what they're going to do. They're going to start going back and saying, hey, we're going to copyright infringe on all of you. We're going to make our money off of that. proprietary content and the rights to it. And will that be something that the big streaming media giants will offset? Will they make the cost go on to all of you? Will they raise the prices just for that? And will that be the corporate media's way of getting revenge on those that have abandoned the traditional media establishment? Just keep that in mind. Now, another thing that comes to big media and the corporate culture, which I always complain about. Interesting story I never got a chance to talk about through Deadline.com. The salaries that were being paid during the pandemic as the industry cratered. About this, huh? Adam Aron, a CEO of AMC Entertainment, his salary doubled to $20.9 million based on a $5 million special incentive bonus. Then you had AT&T giving discretion to adjust pay. And they would try to take away some of the performance goals that were put together. Warner Media Chief Jason Kilar, who joined May 1st, made more money last year than anyone at AT&T or on the CEO top 10. So after AT&T failed in their content run and now are selling to Discovery, Warner Media, Jason Kilar now is just making a whole lot of money while he failed. Well, he's not done well at all. His debut package totaled $52 million as he presided over the decision for Warner Brothers to put the entire 2021 movie slate simultaneous on HBO Max, and what theaters were open without forewarning Hollywood. He's the one that did that mistake. Then they're now going to have to go ahead and turn around for next year. Discovery CEO David Zaslav earned $37.7 million. He got a shout out for transitioning employees to remote work, instituting safety protocols, cutting costs, conserving cash, and keeping the business running amid challenges. He was also responsible for the expansion of the new Disney Discovery Plus. The service launched on January 4th. And so far, I guess it's making some moves. So there's all these different people that are making all this extra money that's fascinating of who's getting paid what. Here's some of the salaries of some of the top media moguls that are out there. CEO of Liberty Media, Gregory Maffei, $872 million, stock awards of $8.3 million, option awards $25 million, non-equity incentive pay $11.7 million. Wow, that's crazy. CEO pay ratio to the other employees, 469 to 1. Reed Hastings is co-CEO of Netflix. His salary, $650,000. Oh, I'm sorry, $872,000 for Greg Maffei. That's all right. Bob Bakish for Viacom CBS. He's the CEO. $3.1 million, $15.9 million in stock awards, $19.7 million in non-equity incentive pay. Crazy. Ted Sarandos is also part of Netflix. $20 million salary, $18 million in option awards. Wow, that kind of money. Look at what they're getting out there. Tom Roach, CEO of Charter Communications, $2.1 million. Discovery's David Zaslav, $3 million a year. $3 million a year for Brian Roberts, CEO of Comcast, CEO of NBC Universal, $16.5 million. And Lachlan Murdoch, the CEO of Fox, $29 million. Woo, a lot of money. And there's a whole lot more in there. You can take a look at that for yourselves. Now, while we have the issues that are being said when it comes to LGBTQ representation, there are some experts out there that are excoriating the media industry because the industry is still beset by sexism. There's a story I got from Advanced Television. First time I'm looking at this, advanced-television.com. In the story, they say that it's been nearly 4 years from the genesis of the Me Too movement, and the industry is still beset with instances of sexist, inappropriate, and discriminatory behavior, with a range of organizations and individuals lending their weight and voices to call for reform. We all know it started off with Alyssa Milano that really started this all off, October 15, 2017. And they go through a number of people that have come out, and that are still some problems right now. where in this year, 2021, actor-director Noel Clarke has been accused by 20 women of inappropriate behavior and bullying, and the BAFTA being forced to confess it was aware of the allegations prior to presenting him with an award. The Brit Awards, by the way. The British Association of Film and Television Academy, that's what it was, yeah. In May 21, the pop group Little Mix shouted out sexism at the Brit Awards with the combined voices of Scarlett Johansson, Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos, Amazon Studios' Jennifer Salke, joining the criticism of the film industry group, the Hollywood Foreign Press, for sexism and racism. According to Johansson, participating in the press conference and award shows has often meant facing sexist questions and remarks by certain Hollywood Foreign Press Association members that bordered on sexual harassment. So the question begged is just how sexist is the media industry? Which forms do sexism take, and how can it be reformed? So with all this performative and placating and capitulation that we get of our content, we're trying to evaluate the people that are in positions of power and really looking at their morals, which I think is actually an important story right here. Female representation within the industry is a key concern. According to McKinsey's Breaking the Glass Screen research, while women are well represented in media and entertainment companies, not at senior levels. Only 27% of C-level positions are held by women, and half of respondents to the study said they believe that women are judged by different standards to men. There's some stuff going on when it comes to UK and Australia and other areas that they talk about, which I'm not going to go and spend too much on. But they go through a lot of different areas that they talk about. And I just thought that some of that was actually kind of interesting overall. Okay, two other stories I want to bring up before we're going to wrap things up. How dire is cable television? Because it is dying. A slow decline. Yahoo and their entertainment reporter Andy Meek actually put out quite a bit on here that we should go ahead and bring up. They picked up a story from BGR.com. Let's go ahead and bring that up. Titled, Cable TV is Dying and the Industry Only Has Itself to Blame. So we all know that many of us started tacking on subscriptions to services like Disney Plus, Hulu, Apple TV, Peacock, and others, such that in many cases it became much more expensive to ditch cable in favor of going cordless and getting your entertainment fix from streaming TV options. But now more than half of the U.S. and 37 states to be exact, according to research from Versus Reviews, they say that people spend more on average on streaming versus what they spend, or in many cases spent on cable. It's generally not a lot, with streaming only costing more than cable by a few dollars a month in many cases. But how terrible has the industry gotten when people want to pay more on a go-forward basis to be rid of it? Well, we know that first quarter 2021, cable TV industry has continued to bleed customers at a staggering rate. Comcast and AT&T are leading the way. Leitzman Research Group estimates the number of cable cord cutters in the U.S. In the first quarter was close to 2 million users. According to the eMarketer, the number of households that still subscribe to cable TV is less than 75% than what it was in 2013, which was a peak year for the industry. But there's so many reasons for this at a high level, not hard to feel pretty certain that the industry did this to themselves. Nickel and diming customers, suckering people into inscrutable contracts with gotcha clauses that it takes a lawyer to understand, and terrible customer service. They're just many of the practices that drove and continue to drive customers straight into the arms of streaming alternatives. When people got tired, the digital disruption changed the game altogether. The postscript of this news, of course, is that the worst offenders are still going to get paid. According to the Motley Fool, they say that Americans are not cutting the cord, or aren't cutting the cord and foregoing TV for good. Rather, they're just simply enjoying it in a different way now. While 2 million Americans entered the relationship with cable TV, a whopping 46.4 million streaming services were purchased. That's a lot. That just says everything. In the same time that we saw in 3 months, 2 million Americans dropping cable, 46 million bought new streaming services. Whew. Incredible. It's what it changes. That's where it all is right now. And one other story I got to talk about, because I remember early on this program, if you remember listening to this program for any amount of time, you know that I was concerned about the movie theaters when they started doing the thing with Movie Pass. Remember Movie Pass? I remember I used to talk about that all the time here on the program. Very early on, as a matter of fact, I really was onto that and really got pissed off about that. Maybe some of you might have remembered me talking about it. But I remember I used to go and really ramp on Movie Pass because of how bad it was. I mean, I could go back to January 12th. Wow. January 12th, 2018, which would have been the second episode of Creative Not Corporate, is when I actually talked about that. And I went into August. I remember 2018 was a horrible year for Movie Pass. So bad for them. Well, we have more news about them as we're learning about how bad Movie Pass really was to the people that had it. Remember, you get what you pay for. So Movie Pass was even shadier than we thought. This is from Alyssa Wilkinson over at Vox.com. She mentions that the service's most devoted users were apparently getting scammed by the company. At one point, 3 million people paid about $10 a month to see whatever movies they wanted to see in theaters. And we all said it was too good to be true from the start. And I never bought it. I was never interested in it. But what it did do was it got the other movie theaters to start going subscription-based. For me, that was a godsend. So I'm thankful for Movie Pass for giving me my Regal Unlimited Pass. Thank you. For AMC A-List. Thank you. Yeah, that's what they did. I think that was actually something that was good, where the big corporate types actually took advantage of some upstart trying to disrupt their business model. Well, all they did was actually help out the other businesses by learning from it, learning from the mistakes. That's a smart corporate mentality. Take an idea that was faulted but had good ideas and a good concept, and then rework it to make it be beneficial. Pretty smart. The Movie Pass era, which peaked in early 2018, was in retrospect a halcyon period for habitual cinema goers. Apparently, it was also a period defined by scammy behavior and possible fraud. The New York Times reported on June 8th that, according to the recent accusations the FTC made against Movie Pass, there was a whole lot of questionable business going on, and some of it seems pretty illegal. If you went to see only 1 or 2 movies a month using Movie Pass, you may not have been aware of any weirdness before the service finally shut down in 2019. But for people who use their subscription in a perfectly reasonable manner, seeing up to 1 movie in a theater per day, as explicitly permitted by the service's terms and conditions, at least until it started changing things without warning, Movie Pass started to get glitchy long before the end. Tickets for certain movies wouldn't be available, or they would be subject to a premium fee. Your password might mysteriously be reset, or there's some unauthorized activity in your account. Perhaps you were told you'd been randomly selected to upload a photo to your ticket stub via the app for verification. The app then wouldn't work and your account would be shut down. Or you try to cancel your subscription only to find it had been reactivated without your permission. Well, the FTC discovered that many of Movie Pass's hassles and hoops were intentional. According to the New York Times, Movie Pass on June 7th agreed to settle with the FTC over accusations that the company knowingly deceived its most active customers in order to cut its own costs. That is some real cap. All right? So a quick reminder. Movie Pass worked with, at its peak, you'd buy a movie ticket at a regular price in a theater lobby using the specially branded Movie Pass debit card to pay for it. The machine would spit out a ticket and you'd go see a film. Meanwhile, Movie Pass would reimburse the theater for the ticket's full cost, which, depending on whether you were in the U.S. and the time of day, started at $9 or so and could go up to $17 in a market like New York City. Every month, Movie Pass charged you a subscription fee of about $10. And then, basically, Movie Pass was selling deeply discounted tickets to its customers. This was an obviously unsustainable business model, but then the presumed end game was to rapidly grow its customer base by dramatically dropping its price to less than that of a single movie ticket in nearly all markets. The service had cost as much as $50 a month in previous years. They threw its weight around with potential advertisers and partners. The price drop came after data analytics company Helios and Matheson bought MoviePass, and the company did raise eyebrows for hinting at plans to mine and even sell its subscribers' data. Look at the shit that was going on here, huh? MoviePass was banking on the age-old glossy magazine strategy of selling steeply discounted subscriptions in order to attract lucrative advertisers who wanted to reach a large subscriber base. For MoviePass, it seemed the service hoped to approach movie studios and theater chains with proposals for partnerships, business relationships, and profit-sharing agreements, as well as to leverage its user base in making those deals. As some of its business moves confirmed it. MoviePass's success always depended on cementing those big money-making relationships before it exhausted its own pool of money, since the company was effectively taking a loss on every customer who signed up. And when it came to subscribers who used the service a few times a month, MoviePass was losing a lot of money. So it tried to slow down its power users. And they did it through three ways. First, MoviePass would invalidate the passwords of about 75,000 power users, claiming it detected suspicious activity or potential fraud. That was a lie. Sound like Maury Povich saying that. And when a customer tried to reset their password, a very reasonable thing to do, they'd run into technical problems. Either they'd be sent to an invalid link to perform the reset, or they wouldn't receive a reset email at all, or the reset link wouldn't accept their email address as valid. And then MoviePass's bad customer service would be then unresponsive or unavailable. According to the FCC, half the users were able to reset their password within a week, and MoviePass CEO Mitch Lowe and Chairman Ted Farnsworth knew all about it because they had a couple of jaw-dropping bullet points in the commission's official complaint, which quotes from company communication. When the executives presented the disruption program to other executives, one executive warned that the password disruption program would, quote, be targeting all of our heavy users, and, quote, there's a high risk this would catch the FTC's attention and could reinvigorate their questioning of MoviePass from a consumer protection standpoint. It's amazing. This was amazing. And now we're learning about it 3 years later. But I always said, be careful of MoviePass. Don't get on it. I knew there was something bad about it. And I can say, after starting this program 3 years ago, I was absolutely right. Now we are validated. Yes. Now, in the story, they do make the point of what I said. The rise and fall of MoviePass paved the way for more measured and reasonable movie ticket subscriptions, such as AMC Stubs. For now, through the FTC's complaints and MoviePass's decision to settle, at minimum helps validate the feelings of many of its most loyal customers. Hopefully you're on a settlement for this and you're going to get some money back on some of this. Probably not much because the lawyers will get the most of it, but maybe you'll get a little bit of peace of mind and a little bit of cash back for being part of MoviePass, you poor subscribers, you. So now we're going to leave it there. And hope your eyes are open to the constant change of what's going on here, of which the Broadcasters Podcast wants to provide all of you on a regular basis. Make sure to go to the website, check out all the past episodes for yourself. Anything I should go and talk about in the program, if you feel like you want to be a guest here, then by all means reach out to me. I'm on social media all over the place at King of Podcasts, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Just find me. I'm there. And we'll come back for another episode next week. Until then, remember that content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast. Find all the links to subscribe to the show by going to broadcasterspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program, the Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at wrestlingisreal.com.